this schedule really shapes up for a playoff run with a 12-team playoff.
Areas that, you need to get from experience, which is just, hey, I need to make quicker decisions.
How do you define success for this team?
National championship.
What's going on, y'all? Bud Elliott here of the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast. This is our summer school edition, trying to rip through as many of these FBS D1 teams as we can. Today, pleased to be joined by Jared Kelly, covers Indiana for Peegs. Jared did a great job for us last year on the show, giving the rundown of what I think we were both fairly bought in on Indiana being a much improved team. I don't know if we really saw them making a run to the college football playoff, but dude, how cool was that to see that thing unfold, to have the opportunity to cover that?
Yeah, for a while there, I really couldn't believe what I was seeing from my vantage point. I was at some of the road games, obviously all the home games, and every week they kept rattling off wins. It's like, when is this going to end, right? It's like the fairy tales happen. You're at week 6, you're 6-0, first team bowl eligible. It's like at some point the train has to stop moving like it has, and it never did really up until the Ohio State game, and then make the CFP. Notre Dame game doesn't go as Cignetti and the Hoosiers had wanted. But I mean, you make college football playoff, 11-1 in your first season under Cignetti. That was about as memorable of a one-year turnaround as I can remember. At least, you've been around a lot, college football a lot longer than I have, Bud. But that was, nothing short of miraculous, honestly.
That was wild. All right, let's get into this thing. So Cignetti comes back. The coaching staff is basically the same, with the exception of what? Sensori left, the quarterback coach for UCLA, to go be an OC. That's pretty understandable upgrade there, to go actually be able to call your own plays. So Curtis Rourke's gone. Fernando Mendoza comes in. How do you see the offense changing under Mendoza from Cal?
Well, the first thing is, and we learned this quickly after the 2024 season ended, Curtis Rourke played on a torn ACL the entire 2024 season. First of all, just huge props to him, because that was just remarkable that he got through the whole season. But obviously that limited a lot of what he could do, what Indiana could do offensively, just in terms of moving the pocket, getting him outside the pocket, scrambling, rolling options, that sort of thing. So with Mendoza, you look at his rushing stats at Cal, not impressive, but, sack adjusted, because Cal had one of the worst offensive lines in the country last year. So that impacted his rushing stat. But, just watching his tape, his film, he gives you a lot more on the ground. Now he's by no means a true dual threat, but, he can make plays with his feet. He can get outside the pocket. One play during the spring game stood out. He rolled to his left, obviously off platform, back foot, launched like a 30-yard rocket for a completion. Those are the type of things that you're going to get from Fernando Mendoza. The hype train has been kind of simmering here lately on the uptick for Mendoza. I've seen a couple mock drafts with him, potentially going in the first round of the 2026 NFL draft. The arm talent is there, 6'5", 225, everything you want in a starting quarterback, 2 years of experience at Cal. There's not much that you can say about Fernando Mendoza that you couldn't say with Curtis Rourke. And I honestly think Fernando Mendoza, his legs especially, bring a different element. Now we'll see, because Curtis Rourke was so good at adjusting to Mike Shanahan's offense at Indiana. He kind of caught on right away. Mendoza, 2 years of starting experience at Cal, so that should help him. Improved offensive line should help him, but we'll see if he can pick up the offense as quickly as Curtis Rourke. But in terms of talent, in terms of skill level, he's right on par with Curtis Rourke. He might honestly be better.
Last year they had a tandem of backs, put up a pretty nice year. This year they bring in Roman Hemby from Maryland, who has a long time been a really good pass catcher as well as a runner. How do you see this backfield playing out?
This is a really strong – now, Indiana had a really strong backfield last season, a two-headed monster with Justice Ellison and Tyson Lawton. Both guys have obviously graduated the program. This year, you bring in Hemby, a guy with 4 years of Big Ten experience. Now, the one guy I do want to – that I kind of think is a sneaky pick for a breakout pick, Kanell Black. He's a senior, transferred from James Madison last year. Injuries kind of hampered him a little bit, so he's pushed down the depth chart. But this year, he should be in line for a big role. Kanell Black should, alongside Roman Hemby. Now, the Hemby addition, I think, not taking anything away from Ellison or Lawton last year, but I think Hemby kind of gives you that home run hitting ability that Indiana lacked last year, where he can rip off a 75-yard touchdown run that Indiana did not have last year. So that kind of element, I think, will make Indiana's rushing attack a little more dynamic. You pair him with Kanell Black, who's a spectacular pass catcher. He can hit the hole. He's shifty. And then, Lee Beebe Jr., UAB transfer as well. He has 2 years of eligibility left. We'll see how much he gets on the field this year, fighting for snaps with Black and Hemby. But, you're looking at 3 running backs right there with a lot of experience playing at the D1 level, at the FBS level. This Indiana rushing attack, I've said it, I've said it before this preseason, this offseason. I think it has a chance to be better than it was last year. And last year was terrific.
Receiver wise, so Surratt's back, obviously, which is I think is a huge keep. Cooper was a nice piece, last year. They take a couple transfers as well, right? Brady comes in from Cal. Are we seeing like is it Surratt again? And then who's our 2, who's our 3 if Surratt continues to be the number 1?
Yeah, Elijah Surratt, him coming back was tremendous, because obviously there was some questions about maybe would he flirt with the NFL. I thought he should come back for another year, and obviously he did that. In terms of pure athleticism, I don't think Surratt is gonna wow anybody, but he is so good at getting those 50-50 balls, at creating space. If you line him up one-on-one on the outside, you're just asking for Indiana to throw it up and for him to catch it. So he is obviously going to be the top of everybody's scouting report at receiver. But Omar Cooper Jr., I like him a lot. I think this is the year that he truly breaks out. Last year he went for, I think it was 10 receiving touchdowns for Indiana, second leading receiver for the Hoosiers. His spot on the depth chart is kind of weird because obviously he's going to be starting in some capacity, but he has the versatility to play outside, which he did last year. He could move into the slot this year with Tyler Morris going down with that torn ACL in spring camp. So his role is kind of in flux right now. We'll see. I think he ends up on the outside. That's just my opinion. But he's there. He's going to reclaim probably the second largest target share of that receiver room. And then EJ Williams, former top 247 wide receiver, Clemson transfer. He's been at Indiana for 2 years now. He had this weird thing last year where he left the program midseason, part of the whole group of guys who wanted to retain their eligibility, wanted a redshirt. Kurt Cignetti basically said, you're not going to tell me you're going to redshirt, so you can either leave the team or, that's basically how it's going to go. So anyways, EJ Williams, he comes back this year. Indiana wanted him back. He seems to be fully healthy for the first time in several years. The talent is obviously there, 6'4", former top 247 recruit. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. I think if he can stay healthy this year, he can give Indiana another dynamic piece there on receiver. And then you mentioned Jonathan Brady, who Indiana brought in this spring to replace Tyler Morris. Tyler Morris, a lot of high hopes there. Didn't quite pan out at Michigan, but Indiana, they think they found somebody that can replace Morris there with Jonathan Brady, who played with Fernando Mendoza last year at Cal. So those two already have that built-in connection. So you're looking at a top 5 there for Indiana, who should be well experienced, well acquainted with this offense already. And then Brady and the Mendoza connection should help as well. So if there's one spot that I feel most comfortable in offensively this year for Indiana, it's probably at receiver.
So offensive line loses what? The center and the right tackle, pretty good players, but everybody else is coming back. They've added some dudes in the portal. What did you see or hear about Zim Mahalski in spring? I know he was a guy that I think a lot of people in the recruiting industry were, at least at one point, pretty excited about with the upside there if he can stay healthy. I don't know, if he's lost a step or not, but what are we expecting for the offensive line this year?
Yeah, the first name that comes to mind is Carter Smith at left tackle. He's returning at left tackle. A guy who could elevate into a 2026 NFL draft talent. He's been a 2-year starter at left tackle, and you know as well as anybody but how important left tackle is and how much of a commodity they are. So the fact that Indiana was able to keep a starter at left tackle was huge. And the one name you heard a lot this offseason and in spring camp was Pat Coogan, the Notre Dame transfer. Obviously started last year for the Fighting Irish on their national championship run, top 100 transfer. He just came in from day one, entered that Indiana locker room, was a leader. Guys really gravitated towards him. He was one of the guys that actually, sat down with Fernando Mendoza first when the two kind of got to campus and we're sorting through the things on offense. So Pat Coogan, he's going to be a major addition there at center, just, be able to navigate that offensive line. You mentioned Zim Mahalski, the Ohio State transfer, former top 247 recruit. He's had a bit of an interesting career because he's only had one career start at Ohio State. Kind of seemed like whenever it was his turn to start, he got pushed down the depth chart for whatever reason. But This spring, by all accounts, he's had a good spring. Looks to be the starting right tackle going into this fall. And then the two guard positions where Indiana's going to have to sort through, because you get back Bray Lynch, who was a starter last year. Whether it's left guard, right guard, he's going to start in some capacity. Drew Evans tore his Achilles last year in November. He was a starter. We'll see if he's ready for this fall. And then you bring in Colorado transfer Khalil Benson. He was previously to Indiana, committed to Dion last year at Colorado. That didn't pan out as he had hoped. Back in Bloomington this year to finish his college career. He was out. Benson was for spring camp due to injury, but we'll see if he's back on the field this fall, which he should be. So right now, Indiana's in a good spot offensive line wise, and then you got a lot of redshirt freshmen coming up through the system that they feel like they have good depth there. So Kurt Cignetti said this spring he feels that Indiana has a chance to be better on the offensive line than they were last year. And if that could happen, we saw last year, Bud, with the Ohio State game, the Notre Dame game, how Indiana was sort of just dominated up front in the trenches. That's one area where Indiana really prioritized, both on the recruiting trail and in the portal this year. So if they can really shore up that offensive line and that blocking, Indiana's offense could be even better than it was last year as well.
I mean, everything I read here is like, shoot, if they click and Mendoza's accurate, you also have a very friendly schedule to ease into this. I mean, you're going to have Old Dom, Kent State, Indiana State to open up, and then obviously you play Illinois and Iowa, so you better get settled, pretty quickly, and then a bye week before little game at Oregon, which is not easy. But I do like for some of the new pieces here, especially quarterbacks and offensive line guys, that they can kind of ease into this. Jared, is there a guy we have not mentioned yet who maybe, if he finally hits his ceiling, or maybe if he arrives perhaps a year earlier than projected to really hit that ceiling, that would change your outlook on this offense?
Quite honestly, I feel good about the offense where it is right now, even without sort of a breakout player. One guy, I'm the more I watch him, the more I, just looking at him when we were up close and personal there at the spring game, seeing him on the sidelines up close. Holden Stace, the Tennessee transfer, former top 247 recruit, Notre Dame commit, spent 2 years at Notre Dame, I believe it was, 1 year at Tennessee, transferred to Indiana this offseason. He's a guy that's played a lot of football, but you look at the production numbers, not a whole lot there. A lot of that was because Tennessee ran the ball a whole bunch while he was there, so he was used mostly as a blocker. Same thing at Notre Dame. But we're really waiting to see, him come out of his shell as a receiving threat. By going into this fall, Holden State should have a pretty strong hold on that top receiving tight end spot for the Hoosiers. Now, 3 years of track record doesn't suggest that he's going to be, this huge monster production. But I believe that the way that Indiana wants to use their tight ends and the way they've used their tight ends in the past, that's a huge position, a premium position for them. If Mendoza and Holden States can grow that connection and that chemistry quickly, that could really develop into something and just open up Indiana's pass game way more than it already is with the receivers we mentioned.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. All right, let's hit a quick break here. On the flip side, we'll talk a little Hoosier defense.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Hey guys, welcome back into the Cover 3 College Ball Podcast Summer School Edition. That's Jared Kelly of Peegs, like the best Indiana site in the whole world, and he gets to cover a really exciting team yet again this year. The offense got a lot of the pub last year, but the defense was actually very salty and kept them in some of those more difficult games down the stretch. Jared, starting up front, so you do lose TJ West, who I think ended up being so much better than they could have even hoped for, probably. I remember you being high on his potential last year when we recorded it, the Kent State transfer, and I think they got one. But, I mean, he was a beast in there. But you get Kamara back, Tucker's back, Ratcliffe played a whole bunch of games. How do they – I don't want to use the word replace West unless you think they can. But wait, no, wasn't Ratcliffe a transfer? He wasn't back. He was stats from a different place. But how do they minimize the loss of West if possible? And what's your outlook for this defensive line group?
Yeah, well, not to CJ West, who obviously was an NFL draft pick this summer. This spring. But also James Carpenter, he was an All Big Ten honorable mention. So those two guys inside, obviously Indiana #1 ranked rush defense last year. Those two had a huge hand in that. CJ West was a guy that you could just plug in there and he was going to get after the quarterback, after the running back. It doesn't matter where the ball was going. He was going to get there. One of the guys that was a MAC transferred up from Ohio. Kent State. CJ West did. That just shows the talent development of the defensive line room. Defensive tackles coach Pat Coons, he's a rising star in the industry. He showed it with CJ West. So I'm not concerned with the development part of the defensive tackle room, but I do have questions about how the fit is going to be with all these transfers up. You get Hosea Wheeler from Western Kentucky. He played a whole bunch of snaps, was super productive there. First team there at Western Kentucky. But, once again, guy transferring up. You mentioned Dominique Ratcliffe, guy transferring up from Texas State. And then you have, all these guys who haven't played a whole bunch or are waiting to sort of make their mark with Tyreek Tucker. Jamari Monet, those type of guys. Mario Landino was a guy we saw as a true freshman last year. He might kick inside a little bit to DT this year. So the interior is where I do have some questions about just their productivity and impact level, because it's very rare that you find a DT that can, like a CJ West last year, who can come in right away and wreak havoc. But even if Indiana can find different ways to sort of replicate that production, maybe not in the same way, but with one player, but multiple players, I think that could help. At defensive end and off the edge, Mikal Kamara, All-American, first Indiana All-American since I believe 2007. He was a beast last year. This year, they're moving him from strong side defensive end to what they call the stud position, sort of an outside linebacker hybrid role. Just try to get him more one-on-one pass rush opportunities off the edge. And then Indiana did bring in the spring transfer portal 2 defensive ends, Stephen Daly from Ohio, and then Kellen Wyatt from Maryland. So those two are expected to be there in the 2 deep on the edge as well. So you get Mikal Kamara, first and foremost, getting him back because he was flirting with the NFL. That is massive because Indiana, you look back decades upon decades, they have really struggled to get after the quarterback off the edge. You get a proven guy in Kamara who's probably going to enter this season as one of, if not the best pass rusher in the Big Ten. That's just massive. So I think if you're looking for one area on the defensive line, it's maybe on the interior, but those are more questions than they are concerns at this point.
Linebacker looks to be really good again, right? I mean, basically everybody who of consequence, with the exception of Walker,
Jalen Walker
back. I mean, that's not like a nothing loss, but I feel like they'll be pretty good there again. Am I wrong?
No. I mean, you get Aiden Fisher back, third leading tackler in the Big Ten last year, top returning tackler in the Big Ten, coming back for the 2025 season. I would be surprised if he's not the Big Ten's leading tackler this year. Probably going to be in the running for Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year if he has the same numbers as he did last year. So you get him back. He's the heart and soul of the defense. Aiden Fisher is. So immediately the defense is going to be in tune with what Bryant Haynes, the defensive coordinator, wants to do. And you mentioned Jalen Walker. He signed with the Raiders as an undrafted free agent. His athleticism, I think, kind of went under the radar. Kurt Cignetti even said last year that Jalen Walker might be the fastest player on the team, and he's a linebacker. So that tells you a lot. He made a lot of big plays for Indiana, especially down the stretch. So losing him, next to Aiden Fisher will be a bit of a blow. But they really like true sophomore Elijah Hardy. He was one of the few freshmen last year who did not redshirt. Expected to step into a starting role this year next to Aiden Fisher. Elijah Hardy's a guy who he has a nose for the ball. He had a pick six maybe 2 pick sixes last year. Had a pick six in the spring game. That guy just somehow finds the ball wherever it goes. Indiana's really high on him. He's only entering his sophomore year, which is really good for eligibility wise and sort of building out the linebacker room. And then behind them, you get Isaiah Jones, a returning veteran, Caden Turner, and then you get some freshmen that are working their way up. But as things stand right now, a 2-man of Fisher and Elijah Hardy. If you're an Indiana fan, you should feel really good about those two.
So I feel like they lose a lot of guys who, if you watched on Indiana last year, you knew in the secondary. But you get Pons, you get Farrell. I mean, Asbury's back, right? So, right? Or is he gone?
He's gone.
Asbury's gone. But Pons and Farrell are back. Man, it's hard not to think like they're gonna be able to work around who they bring back. Right? I don't know. I'm fairly positive on this team. I don't know that it takes. I don't know if this defense is better than last year, but I don't know that it has to have an enormous drop off. Just given all the key names that they bring back. Any real concerns about the secondary?
If there's one, it might be at safety and just sort of the depth there. But when you're just looking at the starters, the first team secondary there with, you get D'Angelo Pons back, an All-American. You can go into every game knowing that one side of the field is going to be locked down. They're still sorting through that second cornerback starting spot. Could be Jamari Sharp, who's a returner from last year. They added 2 transfers and a Marion Knighton, Northern Illinois transfer, and then Rylan Gandy, a starter last year at Pitt. So those 2 guys as well are going to push for that second starting spot at cornerback. But regardless of who you have there, you can sleep well at night knowing D'Angelo Pons is going to lock up one side of the field. And then at safety, Amari Farrell, like you mentioned, he's a guy I'm really high on, entering his true junior year. Has played a ton the last 2 years. I think he's going to be an all Big Ten performer this year. He's built like a tank. He plays so physical, so violent. He's everything you sort of want in a strong safety who can make, tackles downhill and whatnot. And then you bring in 2 veteran transfers. Lewis Moore from Ole Miss, who was previously at Indiana, a former JUCO transferred to Indiana, transferred to Ole Miss last year, played for Lane Kiffin. Injuries sort of hampered him, so he didn't get on the field as much as he would have liked at Ole Miss. Back at Indiana for his final year, he should be starting next to Amari Farrell at free safety. So I like Lewis Moore. He's a good locker room guy as well. He's a veteran. He knows how to, he sort of knows how to do all the different things in the secondary. And then you get Devon Boykin, a NC State transfer. He was out all of last year with an injury, but the year prior to that, he was really productive at NC State. So he should fill that starting rover position, that sort of hybrid DB, nickel, whatever you want to call it, role for the Hoosiers. So the 3 starters, I think are gonna pan out just fine for Indiana. Now, the depth behind them is maybe where I have the most concern because a lot of it is unproven talent. Indiana's crown jewel of the 2025 recruiting class was Byron Baldwin, a 4-star from Maryland. By all accounts, he's come in. He was a spring enrollee. He's come in and made a huge impression on the staff. I would not be surprised if he, bypasses that redshirt this year. You get Bryson Bonds back. He's a senior, been in the system for a long time. Probably not a starting caliber safety, but he's right there. He's going to push for snaps as well. So a lot of young talent, a lot of unproven talent behind the starters at safety. But I like what they have there right now. And I think Indiana, as the years go on and Cignetti can build this thing, the depth will follow. But safety might be the one spot where you're kind of looking at, if somebody goes down, are they okay there? But right now, the starters, you hope they're going to get through the season healthy. And if they do, the secondary should be just fine.
I mean, I can't help but think about this team, and I see some of these early NFL mock drafts. When I watched Mendoza, I don't know if I saw a first round, but like certainly some guys who do this, they think he's got first round ability at least. And if he plays to that potential, I mean, you're essentially taking a lot of last year's team, which made the playoff and was legitimately a good team. Like maybe it was like slightly lucky, but I mean, it wasn't like a 6-6 team that won 11 games. Like, it was a damn good football team. And you take a first round ish quarterback as opposed to, Curtis Rourke, who I think we both loved, but like obviously the guy, especially if he's playing on a torn ACL. I mean, it's hard not to see this team, I guess, having the potential to be better as far as team quality. I don't know if it's going to have a better record, but with the schedule, with the very easy start, as we mentioned, and then, host Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon, but like Michigan State at home, UCLA at home, at Maryland, who may or may not have a new coach by then, right? At Penn State. Okay, that's probably really hard. Host Wisconsin, again, may or may not have a new coach by week 12. And then, at Purdue, probably not a lot of great functional depth at Purdue right now. I mean, how would you define success for this Indiana team? This is kind of a tough one for me.
It depends if you're looking. So obviously, a lot of people ask this question. It depends what lens you're looking through. Are you looking at through the lens of Cignetti is here and he's established something, or are you looking at it through, hey, Indiana, 100 years of football history has been horrendous? Now, if you're looking at through that lens, the 30-foot, 100-year lens, just making a bowl game for Indiana most seasons would be success, right? Getting to 6 wins is success. Now, Cignetti comes in, completely disrupts all that. First year college football playoff, everybody knows that. So the bar has definitely been raised, right? I think if Indiana just goes and wins 6 games this year and reaches whatever, 6-win, mediocre bowl game, I think that's going to feel like a letdown, which, 2 years ago under Tom Allen, you could not say the same thing. Anything, as I sit here right now, I think the 3 swing games, and you mentioned this already, the 3 big swing games all come on the road. You get Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, and then I guess you could throw Illinois in there as well. But that one's at home, so Indiana might have a little bit of a more favorable matchup there. But those 3 road games, we'll see what Indiana is really made of, because Iowa, Oregon, Penn State, not easy places to play, obviously, as you know. There's a real possibility that they go 0-3 in those games. There is a possibility that they pull out a game or two. And if they can do that, then that puts them right back in the CFP conversation. But you look at the schedule, you can find at least, at bare minimum, you can find 6, 7, maybe 8 wins. Guaranteed. I don't know, guaranteed, but heavily favored wins there for Indiana. Now the barometer though is, can they get back to a college football playoff? We'll see what happens in those 3 road games. That's obviously going to be the litmus test for Indiana, but there is a path here where, Indiana can sort of cement itself as, we are no longer this team that's going to be, fighting for 6 wins anymore. We are a team that's going to be firmly in a bowl game. What that bowl game is, that's all determined on the field.
Awesome. Jared, really enjoy this, man. Definitely check out your coverage all year. Are you going to Vegas?
I will be. Big Ten Media Days, yeah.
I'll see you there. Make sure everybody be on their best behavior, and I'll see you there.